Hello, everyone, and welcome to our debate, and thank you for your time. Today, I am on the side of Maureen Poole, a warm-hearted, soft-spoken senior living her entire life out on the lake. Over the years, arguments, attacks, and acts of anger have broken out, causing problems all throughout the lake between Arthur and the cottagers. Now, members of the audience, imagine this. You have bought a nice cottage for a nice, peaceful time away from home. Then the character of Arthur begins picking fights with you by planting rice by your docks, making ruckus, and disobeying property rights. Now, audience, with all of our evidence, you will truly see and agree that Arthur is not doing this for profit or for his culture. He is doing this to create problems out of his anger, and Maureen Poole simply wants peace.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, you guys look wonderful, and I hope you're all well. Today, my partner, Mr. Attack, and I will be representing Arthur Copper, a passionate, hardworking, caring Anishinaabe man who is being falsely portrayed as an evil, trespassing menace. My esteemed colleagues, have you ever been discriminated against? Well, unfortunately, Mr. Copper has. He plants the most beautiful Mimonan rice on Pigeon Lake, which borders the reserve he grew up on. Tragically, a significant number of predominantly white cottagers are trying to stop Arthur from spreading the love of his culture. Mr. Copper has received permission from not only the reserve chief, but also the Canadian government to plant his rice, and is still being targeted with acts of racism by multiple cottagers, specifically Maureen Poole. And this is all because of Mr. Copper's Anishinaabe culture. Lastly, Pigeon Lake is indigenous homeland which was ruthlessly taken by European settlers. I know an audience this intelligent will agree that Arthur Copper is not infringing the cottagers' rights to use Pigeon Lake.
Now, I'm going to explain how Arthur is infringing the cottagers' right to use the lake and how Maureen is in the right. Number 1, trespassing and property rights. Arthur is constantly going too close to the docks of the cottagers, planting rice beside docks while the cottagers have a legal right to property 20 meters from where their dock stands out into the lake. But Arthur does not seem to care and ignores the property rights. Number 2, disturbing privacy and peace. He is always using his loud boat to annoy cottagers. His boat is a non-motor boat which uses a fan, therefore it makes very loud noises, and he uses it to annoy Maureen. Also, he is always screaming and causing relationship issues between them. People cannot have a healthy friendship when there is always yelling and screaming. Arthur constantly uses the law in his favor to disprove the cottagers, but is constantly abiding by the law. For example, he claims that the land is the reserves, but the cottagers do have the property right, and he still continues to break the law by planting on the cottagers' land. Number 3, hate crime. Arthur says that he is doing it to restore his culture, but he is just planting the rice to make Maureen and the other cottagers mad. All of his actions are based around anger and revenge. You simply can't act normal when these emotions are ruling over your life. And those are the reasons why problems throughout the lake are erupting, and the one to blame is Arthur.
There's no doubt that the typical Canadian cottage owner definitely would not want Arthur Cooper as their neighbor. Both in the CBC documentary as well as an article on AMMSA.com stated that Copper was given legal permission by the reserve chief as well as the provincial government to plant Mimonan rice. Arthur states on page 11, line 1 in Cottagers and Indians, "I love my daughter, Marie, almost as much as I love my canoe." As you all know, Arthur loves his canoe very much. It is also revealed in the CBC documentary that Arthur's daughter has been diagnosed with diabetes. In Arthur's own words on page 57, I'm doing this for Marie to give her and everybody else in our community an option, a window to health. You can see Copper was not trying to be a bad neighbor. Instead, he was trying to be a caring community leader. I will now pass it over to my partner, Mr. Attack.
So in addition to legally receiving permission from the Canadian government, Arthur Copper also used the Manoomin rights to improve the health and well-being of both himself and his daughter. Not to mention, Maureen Poole has also been openly expressing traits of those of being a disrespectful racist. In the novel Cottagers and Indians on page 5, Maureen says, and I quote, "Sorry, but I didn't think chicken was a part of your traditional diet." Seriously? Would a person who openly accepts all races and cultures be so ignorant to indigenous culture with rude remarks and stereotypes? I think not. Although she may try to deny being racist with her only fact being that she's seen Dances with the Wolves, that still doesn't change the fact that we are all seated here today, arguing over a minuscule disagreement over Arthur Copper innocently trying to provide for himself and his daughter's health. Don't you guys think this is simply Maureen Poole portraying her white privilege as she has the wealth and ability to attempt to sue this poor innocent man? According to Mr. Bartha and Mr. Benson, Arthur Copper is an evil man who causes ruckus, picks fights, and disobeys property rights. Well, I disagree. In fact, I find that quite hypocritical, because not only is Pigeon Lake indigenous land, it is land that has been stolen. So why don't we talk about that? My partner, Mr. Murphy, previously discussed how Arthur Copper legally acquired permission to plant Manoomin around the land. Therefore, Mr. Bartha and Mr. Benson are simply incorrect. Which leads me to ask, how would you feel if your land has been stolen from your people, and as you're simply trying to provide food for your family, you get sued by a racist woman such as Maureen Poole?
I want to thank everyone for your time and attention during this debate. After hearing this debate, you know that Arthur is guilty of infringing the cottagers' rights to use the lake. The negative has tried to paint Maureen as racist and an awful person. You said that it was indigenous land in the past and that the reserve is allowing him to plant on it. However, it is not your land anymore. It is Maureen and the cottagers' land, so it is trespassing. It is very sad that Maureen, a warm-hearted senior, just wants to be able to use the lake, but Arthur wants revenge for something that she didn't do. We can all imagine what it is like to buy a property in a lake and not be able to use it, and your grandchildren to not be able to have fun at your house. Let's help Maureen move on from this unfortunate circumstance by proving Arthur is infringing the cottagers' rights to use the lake. Thank you.
Today, I, Mr. Attack, and my partner, Mr. Murphy, represented the passionate Anishinaabe man, Arthur Copper, who has been falsely portrayed as an evil, trespassing menace. The opposition used arguments which made me and my partner, Mr. Murphy, giggle quite a bit as we easily countered each and every false bit of information they had. Proof being, Arthur had permission from the government. He planted the rice for his and his daughter's physical health, and not to mention, Maureen Poole displaying traits of those of a racist. To conclude the debate in which we may ask, is Arthur a guilty man? I recommend you ask yourself this: have you ever been discriminated against? Because Arthur has.